So welcome everybody. Hello, bonjour, quoi. Welcome to our Grow Remote launch session. This information session will give you an overview of what Grow Remote is and how it's going to look like on a local level. So my name is Andrew Hibbert, and I'll be presenting today with Ian McDonald and our guest speaker, John Evoy. You may notice the name is different than what we had on our poster. Tracy was going to join us, but instead we have the other co-founder of Grow Remote, John Evoy, joining us from Ireland today. So thank you, John. This event is part of our Innovation Week, which is organized by the Long Range Innovation Week / Small Business Week Committee. And the Grow Remote local chapter is a partnership between RDÉE TNL and CEN Social Enterprise. And just one other thing I have to bring up. I want to do a land acknowledgement. So we respectfully acknowledge the land in which we gather as the traditional and unceded territories of the Beothuk and Mi'kmaq, and we acknowledge with respect the diverse histories and cultures of the Beothuk, Mi'kmaq, Innu, Inuit, and Southern Inuit of this province. We recognize the ancestral and continued ties of the Indigenous peoples of the lands and waters in the region known as Atlantic Canada. And of course, I know that we're gathering virtually today, but where our chapter is based here in Stephenville, we wanted to do that land acknowledgement. Moving on now to, just to give you a little bit more information about Innovation Week. Innovation Week is being celebrated here in Newfoundland, May 17th to the 23rd. So this is our first time putting together an event for Innovation Week. So we thought, what better discussion topic than, you know, working from home since the beginning of the pandemic and whatnot. You know, a lot of us had to pivot to online, working from home and whatnot, but I think it's definitely going to shape the way we do things in the future. And of course, we have Small Business Week, which is October 17th to the 23rd, 2021. And believe it or not, our committee has already been meeting and putting together events. For those of you familiar with our Small Business Week here in the Long Range region, we tend to organize several events, and we like to put a lot of work into them to celebrate all the wonderful businesses in our region. And now more than ever, it's important, even with the pandemic on the go, it's more important than ever to celebrate the businesses and, acknowledge them for all their hard work. Next slide. Oh, thanks. So, as I said, my name is Andrew Hibbert, and I'm an Economic Development Officer for the Western region of Newfoundland. I also recently started a new position with RDÉE. So I'm also now the Tourism Development Officer on a provincial level. And in that role, RDÉE TNL, we have the French tourism website, so exploretnl.ca, as well as the French Traveler's Guide, which usually comes out every second year. With COVID, it might get a third year of life, but yeah, usually it's every second year. And RDÉE TNL is a bilingual economic development network.
Just give me 1 second here. The slides are a bit slow changing.
Okay, no problem. I don't want to change.
You don't want to change for some reason.
Okay.
1 second now. I'll stop sharing.
I'll just continue talking, that's all. So yeah, we are a bilingual economic development network or organization. Okay, Ian's got her.
Yeah, okay. Should be good.
So our vision and mission. So basically, we're an economic development organization that uses French as an added value. So, in the past, we've typically said, we're a Francophone economic development organization. However, when most people hear that in our province, we have a small French population, very valued, but of course, whenever we're in meetings with, in situations like these, when we say a Francophone Economic Development Network, not everyone realizes that it'll have some value for them. So we have been saying lately bilingual because we do offer services that can be beneficial to Anglophones as well. Like, for example, if it was an Anglophone employer but was looking for a Francophone employee, maybe it was a tourism-based business, and need someone in the summertime who's bilingual, speaks French, to appeal to their Francophone tourists. We can help with that. So it's basically everything we do relates to tourism, entrepreneurship, employability, and immigration. And, we have several projects within those things, and Grow Remote is something we're interested in because, especially in this region, we think it could be a huge benefit to job seekers and employers, and, match, whether it's Anglophone job seeker, Francophone job seeker to employer, it could fill some gaps there. And of course, RDÉE TNL is within a network nationwide of RDÉE Canada, several organizations in different provinces throughout Canada. However, RDÉE TNL, we have 3 offices, one in St. John's, one in mainland on the Port-au-Port Peninsula, out in the French school out there, and in Lab City. And we have, it says 9 employees, but we're down to 8. With that said, if you know anybody looking for a position, we're hiring an economic development assistant, preferably here on the West Coast, and it's work from home. So it kind of fits into this whole Grow Remote, work from home type of thing. However, with that said, if we can't fill the position here on the West Coast, we are open to applications province-wide.
Good stuff. Thanks, Andrew.
Thank you, Andrew.
Okay, so my name is Ian McDonald, and I'm the other side of the project, of the partnership. So I'm the project coordinator for social enterprise at the Community Education Network. Just a bit about the Community Education Network and Associates. It's a well-established, incorporated, nonprofit, community-based organization with 31 years experience working collaboratively with many different community partners, many different funders to effect positive change for individuals and communities alike. So there's a lot of different programs offered from CEN, just to name a couple. We have the Power Up program, housing stability, linkages. They offer adult basic education, and of course the community cafe. And there's many, many more, but that's just a couple of them. So like I said, I work for the Community Education Network and Associates, but I'm actually project coordinator of the project Workforce Innovation through Social Enterprise. And that's funded by the Newfoundland and Labrador Workforce Innovation Center, based out of the College of the North Atlantic in Corner Brook. So the mission of the project is to facilitate evidence-based research and analysis, and to disseminate resources and practical tools which encourages and supports social enterprise growth in Newfoundland and Labrador as an innovative tool for addressing workforce challenges, supporting rural sustainability, encouraging small business enterprise, and also building a stronger economic foundation for the future. So that's a bit of a tongue twister, but it's quite large in scale. So the other part of the research project is to pilot some social enterprises. So we have one operational, and we're hoping to get another one launched within the coming weeks. So Juniper Printing is a print shop located in Stephenville, and it's a print shop that hires, at-risk individuals. We've had one person hired, and she's moved on to another position now. We also have the Long Range Market, which is another social enterprise we're hoping to get off the ground. So the Long Range Market is an online marketplace in partnership with the Bay St. George Chamber of Commerce. And what that is, it's pretty much a one-stop shop for all local businesses in the Bay St. George region. So we're really looking forward to getting that one off the ground as well. So next, it's enough about us. We'll dive into Grow Remote, and I'll pass the host privileges over to John Evoy. And just wanted to, again, thank you, John, for taking the time to come here today all the way from Ireland. And we'll hand it over to you. Just give me 1 second to give you the host.
Thanks a million. Thank you, Ian. And thank you, Andrew. And hello, everybody. Really looking forward to chatting to you for the next half hour or so. So yeah, I'm going to share my screen now too, and we'll. This always takes a few seconds, so bear with me. We are really excited that Grow Remote has been started, not only in Stephenville, but in Canada. I'm going to tell you a little bit about Grow Remote and why we were set up. And if you have any questions, then of course we'll have time for that as well. So we're a small social enterprise. Well, we're a young social enterprise because we've grown a lot quicker than we expected. Really set up on a mission to make remote work local. That's to give access and to people so they can live and work wherever they want. It sounds really simple, and it's strange to think for however many generations people have gone to wherever the work was. And now I suppose with technology and everything else, we've got an opportunity to bring the work to wherever the people are. And it really is like, you know, biggest change in our work and lives and how work works since the Industrial Revolution, really. So yeah, like we're really a community development organization, and we were set up with the idea that remote work as a tool can help revitalize and you know, help sustain rural towns and villages. That was the original thought. We've gone on to understand it can also benefit big cities no end as well. Yeah, but we are a community development organization, and we say that, like, if cheese making was better for communities, that's what we'd be doing. We love remote working, but it's a tool for community development, you know, so people can live happier lives and live wherever they want to live. Really, I suppose this Grow Remote was started before the pandemic, and obviously the COVID pandemic has accelerated the move to remote working, you know, exponentially, and we can't even quantify it. So, but before remote working, like, we would have seen that remote working ecosystem in Ireland, and I'm going to talk a lot about Ireland, but I think I can make some assumptions that it's quite similar in Canada in lots of ways. But the remote working ecosystem was pretty much non-existent. There was a few people working from home, a few people working from co-working hubs, really at an ad hoc basis, and there wasn't any real systems or processes or policies or agencies or support structures or support agencies in place to help maximize the benefits of that remote working. So that's what we're trying to do. We're a small organization, so we see ourselves more like the stage than the singer. We just kind of highlight the other work good people are doing. We bring people together, we make connections, you know, and we're non-profit, which is really important. We feel that, you know, because there's lots of organizations in the space that are doing really good work, but they're for profit. So like, people can assume then like their agenda is to make money, which it is, but even though they're doing good work, and people don't see that with us. We work with communities, with individuals, companies, just to build out that ecosystem. I'll go into a little bit more detail about what we do across those groups. I suppose in summary, we say that remote working has to work for people, planet and profit. In communities, we do a couple of things. We kind of create remote ready communities. So if the jobs do become available, they can be drawn down. We do this by creating chapters like the one that's been set up by Ian and Andrew in Stephenville today, which is really great. And they've been doing fantastic work. With individuals, then we offer training, in particularly a training that we call remote work ready training, so that when the jobs are available, the people locally have the skills and confidence to access those jobs. And very often it is the confidence that people already have the skills, but they think, oh yeah, those jobs aren't for me, or are they real, or whatever, particularly in small rural communities, maybe where somebody, maybe they'd be the first person working remotely. With companies, then we do lots of work. And this is really something that we unearthed as a problem that we didn't realize. Most of the work really has to be done with companies. It doesn't matter how ready your workforce are to take the jobs, or how welcoming your communities are. If the jobs aren't fully remote jobs, location agnostic jobs, then nobody can get them. And There's lots of other problems that we came across, such as like companies who hire remotely have huge access to talent, so they don't need to advertise in the traditional way. You're not going to hear remote jobs advertised on like the small community radio stations or in the local newspapers. They've got access to talent right across the country. When I'm thinking about Canada, it's such a huge place, or even in your particular time zone, maybe. So we have to work with companies to make sure that they advertise properly and that the jobs are location agnostic. That, because very often in the past, what would have happened would have been you almost earned your right to work remotely if you're with a company for 5 or 10 years and the managers trusted you. You could say, oh, okay, I'm going to work from home a few days a week. But that meant it was the person that was working remotely rather than the role. And we want the role to open up so that if you happen to move on from that job, your next door neighbor could apply for the same job you had. So that's just some of the work we do, and I'll go into it in more detail over the next bit of time. First of all, we built the communities. We've got 140 communities now across the world, and about half of those are in Ireland. And we've just completed a new round of our onboarding training for new communities, which the two men were part of. And we've about another new 10 chapters that have just signed up in the last little while as part of that onboarding. And we find that the communities of remote workers are really important, because before COVID, like one of the important things we say is during COVID, working from home during the pandemic when people are asked to isolate is not the same as remote working done well. Like, so there've been lots of surveys, for example, asking people, you know, were they isolated working from home? But they've been isolated because everyone's told to isolate. It's not because remote working is, you know, that desperately difficult. But it can be isolating. And one of the things we do to solve that is create these chapters where if there's 5 or 10 or 20 or 100 people working remotely in your location, they come together on whatever basis suits them. It could be just in the coffee shop to do some co-working. It could be to go to the pub. But to like create some of the experience that you might have had if you worked in an office, but you don't because you're all working separately. But to create some camaraderie. And we find that those remote work chapters were tremendously popular, and they sprung up really overnight. But then COVID came along, and like all the offline activity, I had to stop. And we know that if people are working remotely, they spend most of their time on computers. So if they don't want to spend their spare time then on computers as well. They want to be meeting up in offline and having a bit of fun. And that's what the chapters are all about. Now, the chapters have gone on to have a lot more kind of deeper and more systematic goals, like helping to repopulate rural areas, getting jobs for people in a locality, you know, attracting people with remote jobs to your community because it's good for the economy. And again, I can give a bit more detail about that. But one of the main things, like, what we want the chapters to do is to be like an access to good communications, to let people know, you know, that old saying that sure, there's no jobs around here in rural areas. That's quite simply not true anymore. We know in Ireland, which is just on the corner of Europe, as you know, there's 55,000 remote jobs available at any time. And that number is growing by 8% every month. And they're just jobs that are open. Ireland is a small place, about 4 million people. So that's a huge number of jobs. Those jobs are available anywhere in Europe. I can only imagine, and I probably should have done a little bit of research before I hopped on this call to see what that number is for Canada. It can be picked up from LinkedIn. If you just go onto LinkedIn and find search remote jobs and Canada, and I'm sure there's tens of thousands of jobs which could be drawn down to your community. And why not your community? They have to go somewhere. And I think that's something that people kind of have to get their head around. So like this idea that there's no jobs around here is just not true anymore. And we also know from a community, social kind of an economic development perspective, for every remote job that's attracted to an area that's got a decent salary, it sustains another 0.7 of one job locally. So for every 3 jobs that arrive, it means another 2 jobs are sustained locally, whether that's in the coffee shops or the local groceries or whatever. And that's really important to know. So the next slide, which I'm going to spend a little bit of my time on, is our theory of change. So a theory of change, which some of you probably know, is a model of that nonprofits use to try and articulate the difference they want to make in the world. And if you look at the yellow boxes on the right-hand side, that's what we want to do in the long term. We want people to be able to live and work wherever they want. We say in Ireland, you can say wherever you want, and that those communities become sustainable socially and economically. And we do that by increasing the volume of sustainable remote work. So then if you looked at that slide, it can kind of split neatly in half between the top and the bottom. The top, it's a simple supply and demand. And in the top half, we help work to increase the supply of sustainable remote jobs. We work with large companies to help them to transition to remote. And we work with smaller companies. We train their teams in leading remote teams. So anybody who's working well remotely has a good experience of working remotely. And the bottom half then is the demand part of the equation. And it's basically articulating what I'd said earlier, where we work with communities and with individuals to create the remote ready workforce. And then in the middle line, we bring them together. And just we make sure that the people, we do our best, I suppose, to make sure that the people in the locations we want can access those jobs. One of the things we have is a remote jobs board. Again, it's like any recruitment jobs board, except it's free. So we search the internet and we post any remote jobs to one place, and then we push that out through our social media, but also through our chapters. And we do that because, like I mentioned, remote employers don't need to advertise, that they've got access to talent. The people who are looking for these jobs know where to look for them. So now I think that's changing slightly because there's more and more people advertising remotely, and it's getting a little bit more competitive. But up until recently, there was very few remote jobs advertised in traditional places. It's very interesting. I'll go back. Yeah. So again, this is one of the reasons why the advertising the remote jobs and chapters work hand in hand. We find there are two maps of two of the companies who hire remotely in Ireland. And what we find is when one person gets a job with a company remotely locally in an area where there's a chapter and they're talking to other people locally, then communities of workers spring up. Because it's just like if Ian got a job in Stephenville and he's talking to his friend and goes, why don't you apply to a job where I work, and so on. And I heard a statistic there recently that was really surprising. I think 70% of the job market is hidden, that people don't advertise anywhere. It's just because people know people who get jobs. And that's the way it's always worked, So that's why community is so important to the development of the remote working ecosystem. And I explain that a little bit more in this slide. And this kind of, summarizes the cycle that having a chapter in your area, we hope, can make a difference. It just means that as chapters spring up and people come together, the awareness and accessibility of the jobs become more, I suppose, visible, and more people get the jobs. And we know that when some people get the jobs locally, that means they sustain more of the local businesses, and other people locally keep their jobs in there. And you'll see in the blue boxes the stuff that we do to make that happen, which I think could be done in any country. We do the training and support around the chapters. We have regular online events. We have the jobs board. We do the remote work ready training for people who are unemployed. We do the leading remote teams training for the companies who want that type of training. And you'll see there we have a phrase called a task force. Now that's a piece of work that's still in development, but basically it's working with the bigger companies in Ireland, some of Ireland's biggest indigenous companies, and maybe you'd know which ones that would be best suited if you were to do this in Canada. But we'll say Bank of Ireland, for example. If we could work with Bank of Ireland so that they'd recruit like 50% of the new staff remotely, that means we could be freeing up something like 8,000 jobs just in one company alone. So, and that would have huge transformative effects for Ireland's rural towns and villages. So, I don't know what the best example in Canada would be, but I'm sure you can think of it. It's really interesting. The chair of our board is a guy called John Reardon, and he is the head of Shopify in Ireland and in Europe. And I know that's a Canadian company. And Shopify are actually the largest remote employers in Ireland, even though they're Canada. And I think they've several hundred. They're the largest like fully remote company. They've no office in Ireland, but they at the same time they hire, I think, 500 people. And they're hiring another 1,000 people or something in Ireland this year. I think globally they're hiring something like 4,000, and I think 2021 engineers because of the year, and 2021 back office staff as well. So that's just and that's a Canadian company, and they're fully remote. And that's just an example of all these jobs that are available. And some of those jobs, like one of the myths that needs to be demystified is that they're all techie jobs. Like a lot of those jobs are stuff like content creation, maybe communications, HR, accountancy, and customer service, which would be quite a lot of relatively entry-level jobs, but really good jobs, like relatively speaking in Ireland, like they could have an entry level at something like €30,000, which mightn't be great for a big city, but it's really quite good if it's a young person getting a job in a rural area. And they've got all the things like pension contributions and good annual leave policies and things like that. And there's still an idea that these jobs just aren't for people. And we're really working hard to break that understanding and to encourage people to go for these jobs. Guys, Ian and Andrew, I'm going to keep talking until you tell me to slow down. But I'll keep going. Let me know. I've got loads more to say anyway. Just in terms of the training, which is a very important part of what we do. And again, it's something that, has developed and then accelerated tremendously because of COVID, is our training offering. And we've two main sets of training: Remote Work Ready, which is delivered in partnership with a lot of the agencies in Ireland. You don't need to worry about the names of them there, they're on the logo, but basically, it's fully funded and it's delivered to people who are job seekers or what we on the dole, and to get them ready for this remote work. And it's got a really good success rate in terms of, like, there's a lot of people out there who would have lost jobs because of COVID in hospitality, for example. They might be quite well skilled, have a certain amount of experience, wouldn't have had the remote work ready skills, which a lot of it's to do with the confidence, a lot of it's to do with the different platforms and stuff like we're using today. And we've got a lot of people after getting jobs because they've done that training. And then equally, if not more important, is the leading remote teams training. And that's because we feel that managers in companies are the people who've got the biggest amount of change to do. So we know, for example, in one leading company in Ireland, where they did a survey of all staff, and 80 to 90% of the staff want to continue working from home, at least part-time after the pandemic, but 70% of the people managers want everybody to go back to the office. And that's because, like, the way managers manage, like some people manage, like very micromanage, looking over people's shoulders, kind of tracking what they do. And that has to change. In remote work and done well, it's where we talk about that you trust, you don't track. People's work is based on the outputs rather than the inputs. It doesn't matter how long you're sitting down at your desk or how often you tip your keyboard. If you achieve your weekly or monthly or annual objectives, then your job is done. That would be what we'd be trying to model and grow remote ourselves as an organization, really have very flexible work. And we set ambitious targets, but if we meet those targets, we don't be checking up on people to see where they're at or what they're doing, and I think that's a really nice lifestyle. If people want to be surfing in the middle of the day and working at night, that's their own business, and it's a nice way to work. And I think it's part of, the other part of why remote working can help revolutionize like communities, because people don't have to be in their cars for one thing, commuting. They've got more time to spend with their families and in their communities, maybe volunteering. But also, like in Ireland and probably similar where you are, for a lot of the winter, it gets dark really early. So the few hours of sunlight, people are very typically just sitting at their computers during the day. But if you're doing remote work, and they can be the hours that you have off if you want, and you can be out and about. So we think that remote working can like change a lot of stuff if it's done right, but it has to be done right, and that's the challenge. We also know that the future is hybrid, and this is another big challenge, because after COVID, a lot of organizations might want people to go back to the office the way it was, and some of the opportunity we have to keep things changing could be lost. And like, I suppose we had over 100 years to try and get how people work in offices right. We've been doing this remote stuff for a few years. We definitely don't have it right. We don't have all the answers. And now to move into another new phase, which is hybrid, it can be even more challenging. We know that some fully remote companies are kind of dreading it. They think it's going to be even more difficult than what it was to move to remote. At least when the pandemic came, people had no choice. They had to go home with their laptop and make it work. And now, I'm not saying it's all bad at all. I think there's lots of potential to get it right, but there's lots of potential to not get it right. And if it's not got right, then everybody might just fall back to type and end up back in the office, and this opportunity could be lost. So just a little bit more information about that. I don't know if this is as relevant to you guys as it is to us, but what this, I suppose, does is it demonstrates that, like, a lot of companies are different, and remote working is as different as, if you say remote working, it can mean a load of things. It's a bit like telling somebody that, you know, you work in an office. Sure, that can mean 1,000 things. And here's an example of how different companies work. Like, some companies, if you're working from remotely, you have to work at home. When you're signing up, you have to commit to having an office that you can close the door on because you're making private calls, for example. And eBay, Amazon, and Shopify are some of those examples. Some organizations let you work absolutely anywhere, and Glowfox and Doist are two of those. And again, they mightn't be companies that you've heard of too often. And then some companies let you work either from home or from a head office, and we've a Bank of Ireland or HubSpot there. So you can see that's different, and I suppose what that demonstrates is that there is like, this is always changing and it's nuanced. And I think for a community or for a group of individuals to really attract these jobs to your own community, you really need to understand this for your own space, like, depending on who the people are, maybe in your community that might want these jobs. Like, I think it's a bit like, you know, just because you know these jobs are there, they're not going to land on people's laps. You know, people still have to go out and get them and put the effort in and to do their research. And, you know, and we found that, like, a lot of that research is really quite difficult because the information isn't that widely available. So people have to do a little bit of digging, but the digging is really worth it. And we'd find that's what our role in Grow Remote, or a Grow Remote chapter, can do some of that digging for the community or for the people who might be seeking those jobs. Okay, there's somebody in the waiting room. I forgot that I was host. I'm letting them in anyway. Hope they're welcome. Yeah, I'm conscious of the time, and I want to go into questions. Just to say, from a company's perspective, transition into remote can be a big deal. It can be a challenge. There's generally three things: policy, technology, and culture. The policy is doable. You know, it's a piece of work that the management have to do, and probably collaboratively with all the staff. Technology is doable, even though there's a change management piece that has to happen if you're introducing new tools. But the problem is typically in the culture, and it needs to be a big shift in management, kind of, again, to get the culture right. I think the key for that is to, like I mentioned, is to trust, not track. I'm going to skip on to my last slide here, and I'll just leave this one up as I finish, because there was the Remote How was the biggest kind of survey of remote workers in the world that do it annually. And trust issues is by far, like, it's a bigger issue for managers than all the other issues put together, you know. And we have found, because of COVID, and again, that was 2020 survey, so a lot of stuff has changed in the meantime, but, like, you know, people are not less productive because they're working from home. If anything, we found that they're equally productive or more. I think there's going to be some leveling out of that. I think that people like had a tremendous amount of determination, like to do the right thing during COVID and to get through it and to make their companies work and all that sort of stuff. And that we actually find that, like, if companies, for example, have an unlimited time off policy, which sounds bizarre for a company to do, but that it means generally staff, rather than taking too much time and taking advantage of that, don't take enough of time and aren't looking after themselves as well as they need. You know, so people are committed to their work and to their organizations, and we know that. And again, and the biggest benefit of remote working for companies is like the access to talent. You know, you can get people from all over the world, but at least from all over your province or country. And it's just access to talent that people didn't have before, and it really is a big opportunity. I think I'll leave it at that, everybody, and be really happy to answer any questions if anybody's got any.
Yeah, thanks, John. We appreciate that. I'm going to throw up a couple more slides, about 2 or 3 more minutes, and then we'll jump into a question section at the end. John, would you be able to make me host again, please?
Oh, yeah, sorry.
Okay. Perfect.
No, that should be done there now.
Thank you, sir. Okay. So after all that, thank you, John, again. I just wanted to go over some things that we're going to be doing locally. So, of course, the first thing, as John mentioned, chapters are one of the most important parts of Grow Remote. So this is going to be the chapter launch. The first thing myself and Andrew did was really set clear goals and objectives. So we really focused down on 2 goals. The first one was help the community find employment. So this is kind of a blended approach of raising awareness of the companies, hiring remotely, and also, you know, helping people get training, as John went over a couple of times. So really trying to connect those 2 and bridge the gap, I guess, more or less. And then also, once it's safe to do so, we're hoping to get into some schools and do some presentations at schools to try to kind of raise awareness for remote working and kind of get it started early. The second objective is to help remote workers engage locally. So like John said, remote workers can be kind of hidden sometimes and sometimes suffer from isolation. So we're going to focus on really building a community around remote workers by having events, meetups, either at like the Killick Cafe or, you know, like go down to Secret Cove for an evening. Just meeting up, really building that sense of community around remote workers in Stephenville. So the second part is identifying employers. So over the next couple of weeks, myself and Andrew are going to be in contact with a lot of the people over in Ireland, and we're going to try to really build our connection of remote employers and remote companies that are actually hiring remotely. So that's the next step. Then we have marketing, advertising, and getting the word out. So we're going to be launching our Facebook page today or over the next couple of days. We're going to be doing tons of advertising. I was actually on CBC Morning radio show on Monday morning and did a little clip with them about Grow Remote. So that was nice to do. And, you know, of course, all of you today coming here, getting the word out. So really spreading the word and getting people familiar with remote work and kind of sending them our way if they're interested in remote work. And then finally, match locals with job opportunities. So another goal of ours is to actually connect 3 people over the next year. So it may sound small, but I think if we can get 3 people working remotely over the next year, it would be a great accomplishment and a great spot for the Stephenville chapter to start. And then, you know, other possibilities, long-term goals. Once we have that community of remote workers set up an innovation or community hub. So then we can actually bring that community of people, give them an opportunity to come together and kind of work together if they you know, decide to do so. Then use it as an immigration tool. So bring remote workers to to Stephenville. And I'm not sure if John mentioned or not, but one of the things Grow Remote do are called town tasters. So they can be kind of weekend events where, you know, the chapter will come together, bring people from outside the community in and see or show them what Stephenville actually has to offer. So, you know, they could work in the community hub, innovation hub. You can see all the amenities around Stephenville, which there are a ton to offer, and hopefully draw some families to the area. And then finally, satellite locations outside of Stephenville. So Andrew Hibbert, of course, with RDÉE, is currently working on enhancing broadband on the Port-au-Port Peninsula. So, you know, once that's completed, then we're hoping to expand our reach to the Bay St. George area. So lastly, the Facebook community is up and running already. So if you'd like to join our Facebook group, you can reach out or follow the link here. What we post in there, different training opportunities, tips and tricks for remote working, any job opportunities that we may come along, and you know, just engaging and trying to build that sense of community with remote workers in Stephenville. Okay, so now we'll open up the floor to questions or comments. If you have any questions for John, I know a lot of people should be asking some questions to John, so or have some questions. So we'll open the floor there now.
Hi, Ian. Simone here. I have a question.
Yeah.
And you may have said this and I may have missed it, so I apologize if you already answered this. You mentioned that you're trying to match local people with remote jobs. Is there a plan to connect with local employers that are having trouble recruiting to help them connect with international candidates? Or not necessarily international, just outside?
Can I jump in there, Ian?
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, Simone, hi, this is Andrew. I think that would probably be our first priority, actually. I know what I envision would be local employers and throughout the province first, just for a lot of reasons, because, you know, we want to help local employers just as much as we want to help local job seekers, but also just the less complicated, I guess, you know, than go and say international right away and that kind of thing.
I said international and I didn't necessarily mean that. I should have said remote.
Okay, yes. Yeah. You mean like remote work opportunities, of course, right? With remote employers, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so just basically trying to help employers throughout the province that like want to offer a remote work opportunity. Like, for example, my employer, we have physical offices. However, we, of course, pivoted to working from home when the pandemic broke out. Now we're sort of balancing a hybrid situation where it's a little bit in the office, a little bit at home. But, you know, we have employment opportunities. We actually have 2 out there right now that, you know, involve a lot of working from home. So, you know, an employer could have an office space, for example, but, you know, as long as they're offering something that is somewhat remote in nature, whether, you know, it's, you know, and just to clarify, like, when we say remote work, we don't necessarily mean like in a remote community. We mean like, you know, a distributed workforce. So could be anywhere, you know, maybe it's an employer in Stephenville, but they're hiring somebody in Corner Brook. Maybe it's you know, or vice versa, or maybe an employer in St. John's, but hiring somebody in Stephenville, that type of thing. Does that help?
Yes, absolutely. I was just wondering if it was going both ways. Were you helping employers and job seekers?
Yes, for sure.
Yeah,
thanks.
Just to add on that a bit too, John mentioned some of the training programs for employers. And I think once we get that community built, that's something we're going to be really trying to focus on, is actually getting, you know, the word out to the to local employers that, you know, remote is there and it is an option, and there is training to help you transition to that. So just add on to that. Jeff, I see you have your hand raised there.
Thank you, Ian. Good afternoon, everyone. Jeff Keeping with the Newfoundland and Labrador Workforce Innovation Center. Of course, as Ian mentioned, we are helping to fund this project, and it's great to see. It's great to see that something like this for workforce development and innovation is taking hold. I know we ourselves have been working remotely probably since last year at the start of the pandemic, with a brief stint back in our offices in September and October, November and December. But we're back at home now, and most of us are actually enjoying it a fair bit. We do find ourselves more productive, more focused on the tasks at hand, while at the same time being able to cook supper as opposed to having to run to McDonald's on the way home from the office kind of thing or something like that. So this is something that certainly would benefit, I think, rural Newfoundland, well, not just rural, but rural and urban Newfoundland and Labrador, and promote innovation for workforce development, immigration especially, and retention and recruitment in the workforce. So it's great seeing this. One thing, and on a more personal note, one thing that I've noted over the years, because of course I'm a huge proponent of remote working and working from home, mainly because I'm an introvert and I prefer it that way, is that, like John Evoy had said earlier, the culture, I think, needs to change a little bit on the management side. There seems to be pushback, I would assume, from management, say, you have to be in the office, your 8 hours or 7 hours a day to successfully complete your workload. And I think the pandemic changed that, but I also think that now that we're slowly coming out the back end of the pandemic, that attitude is starting to change as well. I'm hoping to think so. Thanks again, Ian and Andrew and John. It was a great presentation. So I'll stop talking now.
Thanks, Jeff. Appreciate that. Thanks for coming as well. I know you had a lot of other events going on right now, but yeah, like John said in his presentation as well, I think this is an opportunity for remote working to really take hold, and we really can't pass up on the opportunity. It's pretty much now or never kind of thing. There's no better time than now. So hopefully
Ian, I'd like to make a comment. I'm sorry, my screen keeps coming and going, so I don't know if anybody has their hand up. I'm not able to put mine up.
No worries.
So, okay to speak there? Yeah. Okay.
Go for it. Yeah.
So my name is Mike Keel. I've just completed 18 years of working in the environment. So congratulations on what you're doing. I think it's a great step forward by Stephenville. We, rather than remote, of course, there was outsourcing. Here in St. John's, there are perhaps maybe a couple of thousand people, I guess, Jeff, or you may know that better, but certainly over 1,000 people who are doing remote working already. And before pre-pandemic, it was working in a big building. For example, where I was, there were over 300 employees, a lot of immigration involved there, and a lot of people, sometimes called call centers, sometimes contact centers, but nonetheless, we'd be serving people throughout the continental United States, Canada, and sometimes into Europe and other places around the world. And we interacted on a daily basis. Along comes COVID. We all moved to home, and that was our company. So a lot of what you said a few moments ago about the management staff of it was right, but that's still there. The technology covers off for the manager. You may have a program called Sapiens which monitors what you do throughout the day. So the company culture is changing a bit, but not yet to the place, I don't think, where John was saying that it would like to be. But it's a fantastic opportunity because there are great opportunities to build on what's already. These companies, starting off somewhere around $13.50 an hour by local standards, full medical, dental, vision upon starting, and vacation programs, not hard work, not selling anything. There are those companies out there too, but this particular ones were servicing the payroll and benefits needs of everybody. So you can certainly piggyback on that for the Stephenville, but the fact that you're willing to create an embracing environment for those is fantastic. That you're looking at addressing needs of training is great. There's also a substantial amount of people out there that are like me, perhaps, who are older, and Jeff would know me from an organization called Older Workers Newfoundland and Labrador as well, that I care. But there are a lot of people older that this would fit in. So I think it's a tremendous opportunity. I love the attitude you bring to the table on it. And once you bring yourself in partnership, potential partnership with obtaining jobs from the local people who can't get enough employees, for the most part, they're desperately seeking employees. There's not a reason in the world where they couldn't hook up from Kippens or from the Codra Valley, from Stephenville, or wherever it is. So I wish you all the best. It is really, it can be a very rewarding career. It can be, according to your wants in terms of your employment. If you want to work full-time, you can work full-time. If you want Monday to Friday, you can work Monday to Friday. If you want flex hours, you can work flex hours. So the skills acquisition is fantastic. We used to work with, I mean, look at me, I'm pretty old. Well, not pretty, but I'm old. And we had something like, I think, 14 software packages that we worked with on a daily basis. And we were quite well trained. So now training, where I used to go into a classroom when I started out into a group of people, now training for those companies is delivered over the internet and through Zoom meetings and other tools, Meet or whatever the case might be. So I didn't expect this kind of a meeting this afternoon, but I'm certainly glad I got into it. It's a fantastic idea. I congratulate you on it, and I hope to see it grow for you. Anyway, thank you. I'm sorry, I couldn't resist that.
No, that's great. It's nice to hear from you. Thanks for attending. I think we'll be in contact, actually, if you don't mind, just to hear more about your experiences and stuff like that.
Certainly.
I think it'd be a great opportunity.
Yeah. If I can help, please reach out.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you very much. Are there any other questions or comments?
I think Tom had his hand up, did he? If I'm mistaken.
Tom, you're on mute there.
You're still on mute, Tom.
Come on.
There we go.
Here we go. Anyways, first of all, welcome to the town of Stephenville virtually. And for those who are here, it's a beautiful sunny day here in Stephenville, Newfoundland. I always get an opportunity to promote this great town, but before I kind of do that, I just want to say thanks for the great presentation, John. And Grow Remote actually has now landed in our town. I'm very grateful for that. A couple of weeks back, Andrew and Ian came into the council chambers and gave me an overview of what was happening. And my background is I worked in HR education system with the college. So changes in how we recruit, train, and so forth. This is trend setting. And actually COVID has actually had a trend setting in hyperspace, I guess, if you could say that. But we're very proud to be part of this in Stephenville. It becomes a marketing tool, but most importantly, it creates an opportunity for people to get employment, to connect with people who are employed and their employers. And it's solving problems. Stephenville, as you well know, for those who live here, we sort of got a little microclimate here in the sense, if you haven't been to Canada, John, but in Newfoundland, we're a big province. We're bigger than Germany in land mass, 10,000 miles of coastline, only 500,000 people. But on Western Newfoundland, West Coast, we, sorry for the East Coasters, but we say West Coast, Best Coast, and primarily it's because of the weather. And but in all of Eastern Canada, we have the clearest weather record of any airport town in the country. So that's a pretty big statement that exists. But the big question I needed to know, I guess the company has grown substantially, no doubt, John, but your in-house training modules, I guess that's some baseline training, but there's a lot of adaptation, I guess. So when you deal with employers, do you actually work with employers and their training and HR people to kind of match to ensure that the competencies exist for the new hires who may be looking to work remotely in Stephenville, Newfoundland? How far along are we with the training on that front?
Yeah, thanks, Tom. Thanks for the welcome and the background as well. So the training we offer, I suppose, is targeted. So two sets of training, as mentioned. One is for the job seekers, and we would feel that we'd get them up to speed to like work in a typical remote working environment, you know, where the classical tools, the Zoom, Slack, Microsoft Teams, but also like the etiquette of what it's like to work on a remote team and what's expected of people. From an employer's perspective, we kind of, I didn't go into it much in the presentation, but we're aware of what we call a maturity model, where like really there's a series of steps from like a fully in-office team right across to a fully remote, fully distributed team that works like 100% perfectly, right? And there's kind of 5 steps across. And again, there's kind of 3, there's the senior executives, there's the people managers and all other colleagues. So everybody has to go on a journey. And for the training we do with companies, we're really looking at the people managers in the middle. Like I think there's a separate piece, which we don't do yet, to be honest with you, for senior executives, because it's very hard to get them to go to training anyway. But they have to make the decisions. And then the all other colleagues, they could actually do the same training as the job seekers with a little bit of a tweak to it, you know. But yeah, it's the people managers are the key to that success. We do have a competency framework. I'm not sure if it'll be the same in Canada as in Ireland, because we have it linked to like what we call QQI, which is like our framework for qualifications nationally. But I'm sure there's still, we've got room to improve as well. And we hadn't really talked about, you know, bringing that across the Atlantic yet, but we'd be very happy to. Yeah.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, Jeff, I see you have your hand raised again.
Yeah, thanks, Ian. I actually have a question for John, if you don't mind, John.
Yeah, of course.
I'm just wondering about how important do you feel it is for the employer and the employee in the remote work situation to set certain boundaries? Like, for example, right now we are on the standard 8:30 to 4:30 workday. At the end of the workday, I get up, I shut down my computer, I walk away, mainly not to stress myself out or overtask myself. How important do you feel that is in that whole process?
Yeah, I think it's very essential and a good question, and very topical in Ireland. And we've just brought in some a national policy from the government about remote working policy, which includes one of the key points is a right to disconnect for an employee. And I think they've got legislation in other countries across Europe about that right to disconnect. So it's something that's taken very seriously. However, to get it right, in our opinion, it needs to be like an important part of the culture of the organization. So if people are working, for example, on their own time and communicating asynchronously, it means if there's good planning by management, where I can tell you, for example, I need something, but I'm not telling you that I need it now. I'm telling you I need it next week. So you've got time to do it on your time and get back to me. So I think it comes down to good planning, a lot of it, and understanding. So if I'm out surfing in the middle of the day and I email you at nighttime, that's because when I'm working, it has to be clear that you're not expected to respond until you're working. And that like, so the kind of traditional working hours from like 9 to 5 or whatever, like don't work with the ideal type of remote working, but it needs to be really deeply embedded in the culture of the organization to get like the requests over communicate and get the requests for information out early, so that people aren't under pressure to respond quickly, that they can respond in their own time. And it's kind of a cultural shift, and it's quite difficult to get right, particularly if it's a senior person. For example, if I'm more senior in an organization and I email somebody over the weekend, the natural response is for them to feel that they should respond, even if I'm only doing it because it suits me. So it's tricky, but very important.
Great, thank you very much.
All right, are there any other questions before we clue up? I know we're running over time a tiny bit, but I wanted to get everyone's questions and comments in. Is there anyone else? All right, well, thanks everyone for coming out. John, again, thank you on the short notice. We really appreciate you coming out and really giving us a great presentation. Much appreciated. And thanks everyone else for coming out.
Just a little reminder before we take off, our Facebook group, it was previously called Stephenville Remote Work Community. This morning we rebranded it to Grow Remote Stephenville / Tell It to Buy Stephenville. So some of you who are already in the group might have noticed the name change, but yeah, so don't be alarmed, that's a new name. And if you have any webinars you want to share, if you see any job postings that involve, you know, remote work in some shape or form, please feel free to share on the group. Try and verify, you know, of course, the source before sharing, but yeah, you know, it's a community, so feel free to interact with everybody, and we look forward to working with everybody. So thanks for joining us.
Thank you,
everybody.
It was
Thank
great.
you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
See you later. Thanks again.